Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. Wicked and whimsical adventure is coming today on the show. I am your host, Justin.
And I'm your co-host, Ian.
Brandon is having child problems, so he'll be here momentarily.
Hopefully.
Today we are going to be talking about Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I am super excited for this. There's just a lot to talk about, so let's give you the overview before we get into the crunch, shall we?
Yep.
Once every 8 years, a fantastical Witchlight carnival touches down on your world. I love that.
Yep.
Bringing joy to one settlement after the next. Its owners, Mr. Witch and Mr. Light, know how to put on a good show. But there's more to this magical extravaganza than meets the eye. They're almost like Transformers in that way, I guess.
Yep. Well, indeed, there is. This carnival is a gateway to a fantastic Feywild domain unlike any found in the material plane. Time, however, has not been kind to this realm, and dark days lie ahead. Unless someone can thwart the dastardly schemes of the Hourglass Coven.
If you don't know, the Wild Beyond the Witchlight takes adventurers from the Witchlight Carnival to Prismeer, a Feywild domain of delight, and is designed for characters levels 1 through 8. This book comes with a poster map that shows the carnival on one side and Prismeer on the other side, and it's huge and awesome.
Yeah, it's a very nice map, actually. Actually, the artwork in this book in general is kind of awesome.
Yes, I love the style.
Yep. And the adventure begins in the campaign world of the DM's choice, which I think is a very nice touch. The Witchlight Carnival serves as a means by which characters can enter the Feywild and can easily be dropped into just about campaigns, I think, afterwards.
Yeah. One of my favorite things is it does add new character backgrounds. My personal favorite is the Fey Lost for characters who grew up in the Feywild, which I think is nice. Mm-hmm. And the Witchlight Hand for characters who work at the Witchlight Carnival, which is pretty dope.
And as somebody who has read some mythologies involved like the Fey, I thought those actually were decent backgrounds.
Hell yeah, they were.
And on top of all that, this book introduces two races. One is the fairy, and the other is a Paragon, which is basically humanoid rabbits.
When I first read that name, I was like, what the hell is a Paragon? I thought like a heron, like a bird.
Which is fair.
And then I found it's a rabbit. I was like, oh, hare. Okay, that makes sense. All the encounters in the adventure include a non-combat option. Actually, combat is secondary, which I think is something that Wizards of the Coast has never really done before. So that was really exciting. And
I do feel like some tables will appreciate that more than others, but those who do.
Oh, absolutely. And especially because there are people that like the exploration and the roleplay aspect pillars that this one focuses far more on than any of the other books. Not that the other books don't have it, but that was clearly the focus of this book. And on top of that, classic old D&D characters return, including Warduke, Strongheart, and Kellic. I love it because this carnival travels between planes. There are characters from other planes. Mm-hmm. Greyhawk, anyone? I know there's a lot of people that are excited about it. So with that, that's kind of the overview of the book. I want to tell you, in my opinion, this is Justin Hanlon's opinion. It does not represent that of everyone on the show, but I own almost all the published books, and I single-handedly think this is the best designed adventure book that they've made.
And as somebody who has, as much as I hate saying this, ran a couple other adventures from that were published by Wizards of the Coast, that sometimes it's not like barred over.
Like a Paragon.
Yeah.
So I think it's laid out really, really well. And I think that the direction they took this makes it so you don't actually have to read the entire book ahead of time.
Which I highly appreciate as a DM, because let's be real here. I know that they try to focus on the other books for you to read it from cover to cover first before you run it, which I can kind of understand.
Right.
But at the same time, I only have so much time.
and that's part of it. And by the time I read those books, I don't remember half the shit anyway. And that's why I think the way they did this layout is pretty great.
Like, well, I know I used this example before, but I, for the past year, and finally concluded a couple weeks back, ran Princess of the Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. That's a disaster.
Yeah, and I love the concept behind it, but the layout for it is terrible.
Right.
Like for example, when you go through the first set of elemental temples, like there's a prophet at the end of each one, which basically serves as a boss for that element. And I ran the first 3 temples, and the players are going through the fire one. I'm like, okay, I guess since they're now at the back end of this chapter, I better read ahead to the next one. And this was after the players, of course, went to the first 3 temples, killed the first 3 prophets, and practically on the first page in the next chapter, when you defeat the first prophet, the other 3
do this. I remember that.
It's like, that would have been great to know at the beginning of the last chapter.
So the way they handle that in this book is in the very back, they have this really awesome story tracker. Now it's cool. It's first of all, that already sounds cool.
Yep.
It basically gives you character names, who and other details. I want to get into it more, and effects that have happened as you travel through in the campaign. What's really cool, and this is why I think it works so well, is that during the adventure, it notes you want to count this on your story tracker because it's important. It's going to come up again.
Make a note of this.
And that, to me, the book saying make a note of that is single-handedly one of the best design decisions that they could have made, in my opinion.
Right. And something else I think is worth note too in a similar vein, and I'll admit, I had mixed feelings on this one. Not all of the creatures, if you will, are in the back of the book where all the creatures are, but they do drop them off where you'll encounter them. So on one hand, as a DM, that would be kind of nice. Like, oh, here's a stat block right here where I need it. But on the other hand, I can see how it's like, I kind of wish all the monsters were in one spot. Maybe they could have like done both. I don't know. But
yeah, and I think that where is this? There it is. I want to show this.
Yeah,
this is what the story tracker looks like, which I think is pretty cool.
Yep.
But it's honestly, in my opinion, it's one of the best additions to the book. To any book. I think if Wizards of the Coast doesn't include this moving forward on all their campaigns, hey Brandon,
yep.
I'm gonna honestly be disappointed because, in my opinion, that's one of the best story structures for dungeon masters that they came up with moving in this story.
And it's also worth noting too that they have cards in the back too for NPCs, which are not just stat blocks, but it's a good shorthand way to show here's how you roleplay this character. And something I would imagine maybe these characters might show up more than once in the book. This might be a good spot to flip to. So that
I think it's awesome, and you can scan these and print them out or whatever.
Yep.
And one of the problems that I have as a dungeon master personally is I struggle to remember the accent or the personality traits of some of the NPCs. So not only does this work amazingly for this game, but you can take these and probably plop them into any of your games if you want. Though some of them are a little more whimsical than normal. Hi, Brandon.
What are we talking about?
Like one example is one of the purveyors of the carnival, if you will, Mr. Light.
What the fuck is that?
Exactly.
No, the Jabberwock.
Mr. Light is the face of the Witchlight Carnival. He is a loud, flamboyant ringleader who will do anything to maintain the carnival's happy atmosphere. Which sounds, I want to like a hard worker, but in the hand, something dark behind the scenes. Mr. Light wears a harlequin suit and a jaunty hat. When he presides over the carnival's big top, he sparkles like a disco ball. Alignment, chaotic good. Personality trait, there's always something for me to smile about. Ideal, delight. I want everyone to feel the wonder that I feel each day in this place. Bond, Mr. Witch is my greatest friend and most trusted confidant. Flaw, I was the crueler of the two of us long ago, though perhaps that string of vows hasn't quite left me yet. And I like the fact that this, of course, has implications of somebody who comes off as happy, but there's something darker underneath the surface.
Yes.
Is this him right here?
This is Mr. Light. He was Mr. Wit. Yeah, Mr. Light's the one you read, right?
Yeah.
Here's what he looks like.
He looks like Kefka's gay cousin.
So, Kafka?
Kafka? Anyways, so right out the gate, what makes this adventure, like, obviously it's very whimsical. Even if you don't run the adventure, the games are worth adding to your collection.
Yeah.
There are dozens of games in here that you can add to your stories and campaigns and run them pretty much as is, maybe just reflavor one or two things so it's a little less magical. But the way they wrote the games out, I think they're small encounters.
Yep. Which
is done magnificent.
And I do think they do a good job of capturing the Feywild, if you will, and the Fey creatures. And like I said earlier, if you are familiar with like the Fey, if you will, from various mythologies, I kind of appreciate that aspect of it. And as I said before too, the artwork is great.
Yeah, so Brandon was actually just commenting on the fact that like they got these carriages and they're being drawn by horses with fairy wings. And it looks very Fey. And it just screams Fey. There's petals and stuff floating off of them, and that's the stuff that's just constantly going on.
And the art I've seen is very vibrant. It's far distant from traditional
What we usually say.
WotC artwork. It's
Like-
very colorful.
So there's another thing that this book does that I think is amazing, and it ties into the character hooks for the game. So the core is beginning the adventure. They give you a more traditional adventure style, but the big one is something lost. This is so awesome. And it says, use this adventure hook if you want your characters to have a strong personal investment in the story. In this case, they lose something.
Yep.
But what that thing they lose, what would you expect to lose?
Gold, possessions, sanity.
How about your smile?
That's sad.
Your ability, yeah, right? Your ability to keep secrets. Your handwriting. Your sense of fashion. There's literally an art piece in here with a terribly cobbled together character like something out of an MMO in the middle of leveling up.
Yep. I know I mentioned the artwork here too, but I would say this is probably art-wise the most colorful book,
Yeah.
if you will, that they released. Like it's like they took the usual D&D artwork, but then bumped the rainbow over it.
Yeah.
And actually, one of my favorite pieces of art in here is a spider reading a book to various fake creatures.
What is it? Web Spinner, his name, or Spinner or something? Can I just say I was annoyed that his stat block isn't in there?
Yeah.
It's in an expansion. Anyways, so I want to continue on talking about the lost things. So the story behind the lost things is that the characters actually ended up somehow stumbling into the carnival when it was last here, or when they were younger, and there's witches, the hag coven that's wandering around that then steals something from the people that enter without a ticket. And so they take that thing from you. So let's say you lose the ability to smile. It gets turned into a magic item. So in this case, the one that says that you lose the ability to smile, the character suffering from a loss of unable to smile, the hag who claimed the prize has since used their smile to create the Wand of Smiles, which is a magic item in the back of the book.
Yep.
That is just, I mean, and that to me already screams magic and fae and whimsy and hilarity. Don't smile. You lost that.
No, that just makes me think of all the horrible things that can come from it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a small table, but you can make it as big as you want.
Because when you think about smiling, you're like, oh, that's funny, or all that stuff. But what if someone came up to you and said, hey, we're finally having a baby. Isn't that great? And then you just, that's fantastic. They're going to assume that you're being sarcastic. Like, well, fuck you. I'm leaving.
I also think it's worth noting too that they actually have a pronunciation guide for all the NPC names,
which is necessary because some of them are really weird.
Yeah.
But anyways, so continuing on with the lost thing, the whole point of the carnival once you arrive is, to have fun. But if you've lost something, your goal there then is to try to reclaim what you've lost, which spins you in this web leaning between the different areas of Prismere is what it's called, I think, which has 3 main areas, which I think is just great. Ian, was there anything? I know you looked at some of the crunches. What did you think of the new character races?
Yeah, as we said before, the 2 in here are the Paragon and the Fairy. And first and foremost, they do take the approach that was presented in Tasha's, where okay, here's your add +2 to any 2 sets you want. Choose which skills you want. But the Fairy is, in a nutshell, you're Fae. You're a small-sized creature, so that usually means about 3 feet tall, give or take.
Yep.
And your walking speed is 30 feet, but you also have a flight equal to your walk speed. And they also get some spells that level up. Like they start off knowing Druidcraft, for example.
Druidcraft's awesome.
Yeah, right out the gate. Level 3, they learn Fairy Fire, which makes sense. They're fairies. And at 5th level, they can also cast Reduce Enlarge. And you can choose whether Wisdom, Charisma, or Intelligence is your spellcasting ability with the trait.
So I really like that. First of all, if you listen to any of our previous episodes, I did use that to make a awesome character player tip about being a fairy and hiding inside of a conjured lockbox and casting spells from it.
It's also worth noting too with the flight. You cannot use your flying speed if you're wearing medium or heavy armor.
Yep. So that's very similar to the Eric Cocker, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So
But unless I read it stat block,
So the fairy's pretty cool. The Paragon, honestly, I hate the name. I hate it, but that's a personal me.
The hair and gun. Hair and gun because it's a hair.
Yep.
You can be a bunny.
Now,
I can finally make my orange.
Now, what I find interesting about the herring gun is you can choose whether you're a small or a medium creature, which I don't think you really see that too much with races in general.
Right.
And their speed is 30 feet.
They
They're
look adorable.
another racial tree is hair trigger, which you add your proficiency bonus to your initiative rolls, which I think is a nice touch.
Nice.
Hair trigger.
They have proficiency with perception, and they can also, when they have a dex saving throw, they can add a d4 to the roll to bump up the results, and they can also jump up to 5 times their proficiency bonus without triggering opportunity attacks.
That's cool.
They can only do that amount of time per day for their proficiency bonus, but still can get you out of a sticky situation.
Yeah. Garwin actually says it still bothers me that WotC forced every fairy character to try and figure out how they were cursed into being medium category, while every other fairy in the world is average of 6 inches tall. That is definitely interesting, and I did not know that was a thing. Brandon, so what are your thoughts so far? Just kind of looking at this. I know you haven't got much time to go through it as much as us, but
I've always been interested in the theory, but that's just because the whole pun of the vampire Skeeter. But the herring gun.
Skeeter on my beater, whack it off.
For fuck's sake. The herring gun, one I did notice was the lucky footwork.
Mm-hmm.
There's no limit to how much you can do that, unless you're pro and your speed is 0.
Yeah.
Which it says anytime you fail, you just roll that d4.
Yep. Which is nice.
Yeah, the lucky footwork. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's kind of the new stuff they added. I like the backgrounds. They tie them in with instruments and performance and stuff like that. Let's take a look at an example of one of the games that's in it. Does somebody want to scroll to an area with a game? One of my personal favorites is also the map for the carnival is the maps in this thing are beautiful. They're, as everyone said, they follow the very bright colors. It's early on, so it's right here somewhere. But they got so there's one. You can pick a variety of these. They even have a traditional carousel. And there's a situation that can happen where the carousel horses are actually alive. At least one of them is. But in the game, can I take this for a sec? So in the carousel, for instance, it comes with a riddle before you can ride it, and if you get the riddle right, you can ride it for free without paying for a ticket. Which is another thing. You have to have tickets for everything. How realistic is that? So it comes up with its own little riddle that's fill in the blank type of thing, which is a lot of fun. Was there any of these you managed to snag that sounded interesting to you?
I thought the snail racing was kind of interesting.
You want to talk about it a little bit?
The grandstand next to this race course are filled with cheering fairgoers, ringing bells, swinging rattles, and waving flags. On the starting line, 8 giant snails are having their shells scrubbed by pixies. Above the circular course, a wooden gantry hangs from the branches of a central tree, where 2 goblins officiate the proceedings. And they make it very clear that it's a very competitive event. It costs a ticket to enter, and it also even says make note of some things on the story tracker.
Which, once again, is something that I love because it's telling you this is going to be important. Also, are the tickets way overpriced? Like at a real fair? I don't remember.
Yep. And skipping ahead a little bit to the rules, each snail needs a jockey, and any cells filled by characters are filled by other attendees using the commoner step block. And all snails and their riders begin at the start line, which makes sense. And jot down the giant snails, numbers, riders, and so forth. And the course is 480 feet long.
A ticket is 8 silver pieces for an adult or 3 silver pieces for a child. That's a lot.
Or you can make some bargains. If you can.
Yes, that's the other thing. You can bargain your way in, which is really cool. 8 silver. Doesn't like a farmer make like a gold in a month or something?
Something like that.
Like that's a lot.
All right.
10 silver's a gold, right?
And
So
going
a room at 2 silver.
Yep. And going more into the rules, the race is divided into 6-second rounds, go figure. Once the race begins, the snail moves along the track at a remarkable speed, each one covering 80 feet per round by itself. Without the riders, the snails are an even match, but a jockey can try to improve a snail's performance by patting its shell or speaking words of encouragement to it.
Words of encouragement.
Initiative rolls don't matter. Once per round, each jockey can make a DC 12 Wisdom animal handling check. On success, the snail moves an extra 10 feet, or 20 if it succeeds by 5 or more. On the fail save, the snail moves 10 feet slower, or 20 feet slower if it fails by more than 5. Don't suck.
Yeah, and that's really cool because now you have a mechanic and outline for running races in your own game.
Mm-hmm.
You can easily change this from snails to horses to bullywogs to anything like that, which is a lot of fun.
And it does also stipulate that any jockey who openly uses magic and is caught is automatically disqualified.
Yes.
Note how it says openly and caught. So
openly caught.
So all you sorcerers with a subtle spell.
Yep.
Or an arcane trickster with an invisible mage hand.
Yep.
Just picks up and.
And so
or unseen servant.
The games aside, this has got very much a Wizard of the Oz feel in some situations. The story is actually very open to what the players want to do because each area has like a really big map, and they come up with some pretty good hooks for each area. Mostly people wanting you to do something for them, which is pretty good. But in the end, one of the biggest challenges is the Jabberwock, which I loved.
Yep.
There's even a great sword called the Snicker Snack, I think, which is totally an awesome callback to Alice in Wonderland.
Definitely it's basically a Vorpal sword with extra steps.
Yeah. So overall, I think this is a book that everyone should pick up. If you're not going to run the full campaign, hey, that's fine. But there are lots of great encounters in here. It allows you to experience things that you don't generally run into, and it gives a DM a reason to toss in anything they want.
And I do, as we're talking about, think the magic items are very interesting. I mean, there's a few mundane stuff in here, like the Dread Helm, for example, that just basically makes your eyes glow and hide your face in smoke when you wear it, which is actually kind of awesome. I mean, it doesn't actually really do anything, but the visual effect
that sounds cool.
Right. Whereas you have one that's relatively simple called Steel,
mm-hmm.
which is a longsword that's very rare and requires to be attunement from a good line creature. And it's a +2 weapon, but it can also cast Revivify.
Damn, that's nice.
I like your expression. I said that.
So the one thing I really want to talk about is the way some of the quests work. For instance, there's one of my favorites in here was a little segment of the Korads. The Korads are at these like little goblin troll-like doll things. I don't know if you can see that on camera.
Yep.
These little bastards, they're really tiny, but they look fun as hell. And they're at war with these other critters. The Brigand Knocks, which are like little tiny gnome type guys. And if you deal with them together and you figure out that they're fighting the same fight but don't know it, and get them to ally, they become allies. And the little Brigand Knots are tiny, so they ride in the beards of the other critters. And I just like little things like that are just hilarious, and they're so much fun.
Yep. Although there's not much to it, I am kind of amused by the Woodcutter's axe, which is a great axe, rare. It's a +1 bonus to attack and damage, but when you use it against a creature with a plant type or with an object, it deals an extra 2d6 slashing damage to it.
That's cool. See, that's why I love things like this, because they do a really good job with the fun magic items. Overall, there's a whole big story arc. I don't want to go into it too detail.
Right.
A patron has been locked and imprisoned, and some hags have kind of taken control and are manipulating people. So there's a lot of political intrigue in this.
Yep.
Which is something that's probably why I loved it so much. Because even though it's not the traditional political intrigue, there's lots of factions like the Hag's Coven. I forget, do you remember what they're called?
The Hourglass.
The Hourglass Coven.
Yep.
And they have their own thieves group, and there's dozens of factions in here that are fleshed out really, really well. And the way they run the whole thing is just done so well. Like I said, not having to read everything in advance is a huge bonus.
And I really wish WotC took that approach sooner.
Yes, let's hope they continue this moving forward. But in order to do that, they have to get a lot of positive feedback. So
Yep.
if you do pick it up, consider using the link in the comments. We do get a small kickback as it is affiliate link. But more than that, let them
Yep.
know if you like it and tell them how much you like it, because I really think this is what we need.
And it's worth reiterating that once again, this is not meant to be a high-level adventure.
Right.
And on average, the NPCs and creatures in this book that are in here are CR 3-4, give or take. I mean, there's like a handful that are higher than that, but not by much. And even then, those that are in the double digits, I feel like I can count on one hand, really.
Right.
And as we once again said, this adventure encourages role-playing much more strongly than previous adventures have been, which, once again, how much a table appreciates that depends on the table. And I'll admit, I am the beard, the axe, and the enemy kind of player myself, but hey.
I ran an adventure yesterday you would have loved.
It comes with a poster.
Oh, it's huge too. It's so beautiful.
Yep.
But overall, it's really wonderful. I like it. I hope they continue this moving forward with this layout. They have lots of good things that came out of this that I think needs to be carried over into moving. The NPC cards, the story tracker, those two alone were worth it. And I don't necessarily know it's because of the story tracker, but the little segments that tell the DM, this is important, and write it down.
Yep.
Even if you don't put a story tracker in the back of every book, those little notes are huge because there's a lot of information to absorb, and sometimes it can be difficult to know what's important and what's not.
Fuck that.
So,
What's your notes say, DM? Last week, potion, leather belt, goblin that dances. I get it.
damaged treasure chest. Anyways, so is there anything else we want to talk about before we move on? We're at the half-hour mark.
Right. Not in particular that because we only have so much time and stuff. So, and you're probably a lot more familiar with the story than I am. But
Yeah, I read through most all of it this
Yeah.
weekend.
And minor complaint: there's no bow magic item. That's something I always look for in every adventure because there's not much magic bows in the first place. It's all swords and axes.
Snail race.
What about it?
Everyone's getting their snails down and ready. And one guy
They're giant snails.
They're giant snails?
Yeah.
No, he gets his snail ready. And you see that one guy out in the audience just going and runs away. Unless you guys haven't heard that reference.
No.
You are granted immortality and you cannot be killed, but there's always a snail forever chasing you down in the world that can kill you if you touch it.
Never heard that. I feel like I want that minute of my life back.
Well, it's mine now, so.
All right, so Garwin gets that reference. I'm immediately reminded of the meme with Captain America. I get that reference. The Wizard of Oz one. Anyways, so I think that'll do it for our main topic today.